Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith, and with me are my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt and Mr. Ryan Roberts. How are y'all doing?
I'm scared.
Good. Yeah, poor Shelley's stuck in the thick of it right now with the weather.
Scared. Can't be scared. Is it because we're covering Children of the Abyss, Shelley, that you're scared?
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. Screw that tornado.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It just trust me, after I got done researching this episode, I was like, I am never having kids. I'm an excellent uncle. I will never be a father.
Right. No, me neither. Don't want to be. I'm excited to talk about Shelley's brothers and sisters tonight, though.
They're my stepchildren. Okay.
I was gonna say, it should be your stepchildren instead. Yes,
Okay,
we are going back to Shelley's domain yet again. I always love how like the intros play, and if it's all demonic, I'm going to be leading it that night. So
I do relish the idea of being an evil stepmother. I think I would play that part exceptionally well.
I think so.
Yeah, well, I figured, like I said, I'm on this little demonic kick, so we got possession, the hierarchy of hell. I figured we talk about the little hellions that also reside there. So we are going to be talking about the children of hell, or the children of the abyss, as this is so wonderfully
my
said.
stepchildren.
So here's Shelley's stepchildren. Yes, that's what we should just rename the episode, Shelley's stepchildren.
Yes.
So I am going to give my little disclaimers I do at the beginning of all these episodes. Yes, we are going to be touching on religious topics. No, I am not here to debate your religious beliefs. I can tell you that right now. I support your beliefs and what you want to believe. We all differ in our beliefs, and they are very personal to us. So I'm going to knock that out of the park right there. Also, I am not going to be sanitizing history here, because I'm going to be talking about some things that some people may find just a little uncomfortable when it comes to physical deformities and abnormalities back in medieval Europe and stuff like that, and what they did or did not do to those children. So if that offends you, I'm just going to let you know that is going to come up, or not offends, but triggers you. I'm just going to let you know that comes up in this episode. And our last disclaimer is we are in Texas in the spring. There is crazy storms out there right now. So if one of us drops off, hopefully it will not be me. I don't think we're supposed to get it tonight because I'm leading. But if one of us drops off, they will be back with us momentarily as soon as they take shelter, get safe, and come back when everything has passed. So
allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yay,
Texas. Yay, Texas. Exactly. So I'm just going to say that as well. So if Ryan or Shelley disappears, that is the reason why. They are going to go take shelter and come back when it is safe. So, but the show is going to go on because that's what we do. So with that, are we ready to talk about Shelley's stepchildren?
Hell yeah. No pun intended.
Yes, please.
All right, let's get into it. Well, we have long been told that the flood came because of sin. Humanity had become violent, corrupt, and morally bankrupt. This is the version found in sermons and simplified in Sunday school lessons. But the book of Genesis offers a different suggestion. It hints at something far more unsettling. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, yes, we're going back to that one, reads, there were giants
in the
earth in those days.
In those days.
And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which are of old, men of renown. Now these children were not ordinary. They were known as the Nephilim. They were giants, anomalies, beings of immense power and destruction. Some believe the flood was not simply divine punishment for human wickedness. It may have been a purge, a deliberate attempt to erase a bloodline that never should have existed. Yet one line in Genesis stands out. The words, quote, and also after that.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that the Nephilim were not entirely wiped away. Even after the world was washed clean, something ancient remained. Now, over time, the story changed. The Nephilim became legends. The legends became whispers of witches, cursed bloodlines, and unnatural births. Even today, fragments of those beliefs linger in folklore and conspiracy. People still speak of hybrid children, shadowy cults, and beings that enter dreams and steal breath. There were bloodlines that should have ended, but not all of them did. Now, beneath the familiar surface of Scripture lies a story that once carried great weight among early Jewish and Christian thinkers. Over time, however, it was gradually set aside. lost to the margins of theology and memory. And you won't find it in most modern Bibles, yet for a time it was regarded as essential. The story comes from a text known as the Book of Enoch, an ancient work attributed to Enoch, the 5 times great-grandfather of Noah. And according to the book of Genesis, Enoch walked with God and was taken from the world without experiencing death. Now, the book of Enoch claims to record what he witnessed and what he was taught during that mysterious departure from the mortal realm. Despite its spiritual depth, Enoch's writings were never included in the official biblical canon. They became known as apocryphal, which are texts secluded from the final form of Scripture. Now, these writings were not always dismissed for their lack of truth, but often because they provoked difficult questions. Some were considered too mystical. Others were simply too strange. But still, the influence of the Book of Enoch endured. It was studied by Jewish sects in the centuries before Christ. Early church fathers quoted from it. One of its verses even appears in the New Testament, preserved in the brief but enigmatic book of Jude. And within its pages lies a story only hinted at in Genesis. It describes a cosmic rebellion, not one that began in the depths of hell, but in the heights of heaven. And according to the text, a group of angels was assigned to watch over the human world. They were called the Watchers. Their purpose was not to intervene, but to observe, to stand as divine sentinels, never to cross the boundary into mortal affairs. But something shifted. Over time, the Watchers turned their attention to the daughters of men. They were drawn not only to their beauty, but to the fierce vitality of human life. What began as distant fascination slowly darkened into desire. Now, among the Watchers was a leader named Shimazai. He was the first to speak aloud the thoughts that had remained unspoken among his kind. He confessed that he wished to descend fully, to take wives from among the humans, and to create something new. Yet Shimazai hesitated. He foresaw the consequences. He understood the severity of divine law and the cost of breaking it. The Book of Enoch recounts that he warned the others of what such a decision would bring. Then he made a single fatal miscalculation. He said, quote, "I fear that you will not truly go through with this deed, and I alone will be left to pay the price." And in response, the others made a solemn vow. If one was to fall, they would all fall together. It was not a reckless oath. They gathered atop Mount Hermon, an ancient peak that still stands today along the border between Syria and Lebanon. There, they bound themselves in unity, not only in rebellion, but in deliberate and calculated defiance. 200 angels descended to the earth. They chose to corrupt. They chose desire. And they did so with full knowledge of what they were unleashing. This was not a fall marked by punishment or banishment. These angels were not cast out. They came of their own will. And in doing so, they set into motion a chain of events that would blur the line between the divine and the human. And once among humanity, they began to teach. And in the Book of Enoch, the fall of the Watchers is not merely a tale of desire. It is a story of forbidden knowledge. These beings were not only driven by lust, they were proud. And they revealed to humanity things that were never meant to be known. Each of the Watchers brought with him a fragment of divine wisdom, pieces of heavenly knowledge that became distorted and dangerous once placed in mortal hands. Now, Azazel became the most infamous among them. He is said to have taught men the art of forging swords and knives, shields and breastplates. In doing so, he introduced the concept of warfare to a species already inclined towards violence. He also taught women to use makeup and jewelry, not as expressions of beauty, but as tools of deception. These were not meant to elevate art or adornment. They were meant to provoke lust and manipulate desire. So this was not beauty. This was vanity, weaponized. Now, other Watchers shared the secrets of sorcery, enchantment, astrology, and the movement of the stars. The divine patterns once written across the sky as signs of order were repurposed into instruments of prediction and control. One taught the signs of the clouds, another revealed the signs of the earth, still another uncovered the mysteries of the moon, and one taught how to craft potions and perform spells. And the result reads like a divine curriculum delivered in shadow, a spiritual arms race bestowed upon a humanity that could not grasp the consequences of what it had been given. And the cost was profound. What began as knowledge became corruption. And with each new secret, the world grew darker. War expanded, vanity deepened, magic entangled itself in the rhythm of daily life. Armed with the power they were never meant to wield, human beings began to change. And the Nephilim, those unnatural children born from the union of angels and women, fed off this transformation. Now, the book of Enoch describes them not only as giants, but as beings that consumed endlessly. They were evolving into something even more destructive. So the Watchers had not simply fallen, they had infected creation. And in heaven, the consequences began to stir. See, these children were never meant to exist. They were not miracles, and they were definitely not blessings. They were Nephilim, and their arrival marked the unraveling of the entire world. Now, the word Nephilim comes from a Hebrew root that means to fall or to cause to fall. Some scholars interpret the term as the fallen ones. Others suggest it means those who bring others to ruin. Either way, the implication remains clear. They are not heroes, they are not saviors, and they were instruments of devastation. The book of Enoch describes them as giants, enormous, ravenous, and destructive. Yet the word giant does not capture what they truly were. It's a translation, and a softened one at that. In fact, the King James Version of the Bible replaces the Hebrew word Nephilim with the term giants. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 reads, "There were giants in the earth in those days." But older Hebrew and Greek manuscripts preserve the original word. And that difference matters, because giants conjure images of towering men, perhaps brutish, but familiar. Nephilim implies something altogether different. It speaks of beings who were fallen, corrupted, and fundamentally outside the natural order. So they weren't just large, they were wrong. From the moment they entered the world, they were violent. What you got, something, Ryan?
No, I said the initial story sounds pretty Promethean. Like they brought knowledge to mankind, like Prometheus brought fire from the gods and to man as well. And it started off with good intentions, but like giving those people the knowledge and giving them the tools to survive, I guess, on the planet ended up changing them completely. But so the Nephilim themselves, so they were born bad initially. Like there was
Yes.
nothing redeeming about them whatsoever when they were born.
Not
even
a damn
though,
thing.
Even though their fathers or whatever you want to call them didn't have bad intent initially.
No, they did have bad intent.
They did have
because
bad intent.
they came
Right.
into town like drunken cowboys on payday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Basically,
they came in to stir some shit up.
Right. Okay.
I mean, they basically they were told you were to only observe
okay.
and nothing else. You do not cross the border or boundary or whatever of that other than just to observe. That's it. And they got together and were basically like, fuck that. Like,
we're gonna do what we want.
These women and their humanity are beautiful, and they're very, the vitality of it is so alluring. Like, we're gonna do what we want to do.
Okay.
So yeah, they were up to no good.
Again, the Bible blaming a woman for the downfall of something. Shock.
And you were talking about them teaching women how to use makeup and jewelry as a deception thing. I wonder, and I've always wondered this because I grew up in the Deep South. A lot of like Church of God people would never wear makeup and they wouldn't wear jewelry. So I wonder if that's where that comes from.
Very well could be.
Yeah.
Very well could be.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Well, the book of Enoch portrays the Nephilim as insatiable. They consumed what humans produced, crops, livestock, and resources at an alarming rate. When that was no longer enough, they turned to mankind. They killed for amusement. They drank blood. And, some texts even describe acts of cannibalism. These were not merely hybrids. Here's your answer, Ryan. They were corruptions of both species.
Okay.
Too unnatural for heaven and too monstrous for earth. They did not belong anywhere. Their very existence was a violation of creation itself. And it did not end with them. The book of Enoch suggests that the Nephilim too also reproduced. Some took human women, others bred with animals. So the result was a spreading contamination, a world teeming with abominations, creatures that blurred the boundaries between man, spirit, and beast. So the world began to collapse, not through plague or fire, but through bloodlines. It was dissolving from within. Creation itself had been defiled, and heaven had taken notice. The world as it had once been no longer existed. What had been orderly and sacred now stood corrupted and chaotic. The Watchers had delivered forbidden knowledge to humanity, and their offspring, the Nephilim, had poisoned the earth with violence and disorder. What began with a single act of rebellion had torn open a wound in the structure of existence. And the Book of Enoch describes a world spiraling into ruin. The Nephilim, no longer satisfied with the destruction of human civilization, turned on each other. Blood soaked the land, the sky filled with unnatural signs, and humanity, already fragile, stood powerless before the nightmare it had helped to create. The corruption that overtook the world was not only physical, it was spiritual, reaching into the very fabric of creation and twisting it beyond recognition. And the lines between the species blurred even further. Hybrids, neither fully human nor fully beast, began to roam the earth. So the implication is clear. The sin of the Watchers poisoned the natural order itself, reshaping life into something grotesque and unnatural. The cries of the righteous, those few who remained untouched by the spreading wickedness, rose up to heaven. Heaven heard, and heaven answered. In the Book of Enoch, the archangels are summoned. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel are each given a task. They are commanded to witness the state of the world, to see how deep the corruption had spread, and to prepare the way for judgment. Yet even as judgment drew near, the Watchers sought to resist it. They turned to Enoch, the man who walked with God, pleading with him to act as their intercessor. They begged him to deliver their petition to the Most High and to plead forgiveness on their behalf. Enoch recorded their desperate words and carried their plea to the throne of heaven. The response he received was swift and final. There would be no mercy, no redemption, and definitely no return. The Watchers were condemned, their offspring marked for destruction, and the earth itself declared beyond salvation. Cleansing had become the only option. The flood was no longer a threat, it was a certainty. The Watchers had shattered that boundary between heaven and earth. Their children had torn apart everything that followed, and the infection could not be healed. It had to be purged. So the Book of Enoch describes the punishment in stages. The Watchers, once radiant beings of divine authority, were cast into the depths of the earth. Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel, the one who had introduced the arts of warfare and seduction to mankind. Azazel was buried beneath the desert, sealed within a pit of jagged stones, where he would remain in darkness until the day of final judgment. Shimazai, the leader who once hesitated but ultimately fell, was also bound. He was forced to watch his children perish before his eyes. The other Watchers were cast into vast, hidden valleys beneath the mountains, imprisoned in darkness where they too would remain until the end of days. Their names would be forgotten, but their punishments would endure for eternity. And then the flood came. Now, according to both Genesis and the Book of Enoch, this was not merely a response to human wickedness. It was an act of purification, a divine reset meant to wipe away a creation that had been irreparably defiled. Rain fell from the heavens, and the fountains of the deep erupted from below. The earth was consumed, swallowed by water, and the world that once teemed with life fell silent beneath the waves. The Nephilim perished, their monstrous bodies destroyed, but their spirits endured. Enoch writes that the souls of the Nephilim, twisted by their unnatural births and violent deaths, found no rest. They did not return to heaven, nor were they granted peace. Instead, they became the evil spirits cursed to wander the earth. Now, later traditions would call them demons, but they were not the fallen angels. They were the lingering spirits of those who were still hungry, still furious, and still seeking a way back into the world they had once ravaged. The flood had come to erase what had been done. It drowned cities, it destroyed the Nephilim, it silenced a world that had gone terribly wrong. Yet one line in Genesis remains, almost hidden, untouched by the floodwaters. And also, after that. It's easy to pass over, a small phrase buried in the greater story, but for centuries, that single sentence in Genesis has raised an unsettling question. If the Nephilim were the cause of the flood, how could they appear again afterward? Some theologians suggest it's a contradiction. Others call it a mystery. But among those who study the ancient texts closely, it has become a doorway into something far more troubling. There are theories, some ancient, some modern, which propose that the bloodline of the Nephilim did not die with the flood. Instead, it may have found a way to survive. One theory points to the wives aboard Noah's Ark. Scripture tells us that Noah was perfect in his generations, but it says nothing about the ancestry of the women who boarded alongside him. It raises the possibility that the corruption was carried forward not through the man chosen by God, but through the wombs of the unnamed women who accompanied him. Another theory suggests that the spirits of the Nephilim, cursed to wander the earth, found new vessels among the generations that followed. If they could not be born of angels, perhaps they could possess, perhaps they could influence, or perhaps they could corrupt from within. Even the book of Numbers, written long after the flood, speaks of giants still living in the land. When the Israelites sent spies to Canaan, I see that word, sorry, Canaan. And every time, I know it's Canaan, but every time I come across it, I want to go, Canaan. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know why. But anyways, I have to stop myself. Yeah, I have to stop myself from doing it.
So, really quick before we move on. So you're saying that the spirits of the Nephilim become the demons that people know today. Now, what about the fallen angels? Isn't like Azazel and like other stuff? Aren't they also like dukes and princes of hell too?
Yes.
Isn't that okay? All right.
Yes,
I just want to make sure.
Yes. So
Okay.
again, going back to the hierarchy of hell that we kind of talked about a few weeks ago, it really is going to depend on what source you're reading of what happens to them. Because when you get to the demonic side and you're trying to understand the structure, the origin stories, all of that kind of stuff, there's so many different sources to pull from.
Folklore and the Bible
exactly,
and religious texts and all,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so you have to pull from about 40 different sources, and somewhere in between maybe the somewhat truth. But I don't think there's I don't think at any of this, I don't think there's a solidified origin story or truth behind. I mean, not truth, but beginning.
But if we're looking at this as a whole, like basically the Nephilim are like the lower level demons pretty much, and the Watchers are like the higher level ones in the hierarchy.
If you want to, yeah.
Okay.
And I love that you said Nephilim, because I've heard it pronounced both ways. Nephilim. I call it Nephilim. That's the way that
Nephilim's the way I've always heard it as well.
Yeah, that's the way I've always heard it. So, but anyways, sorry, I had to stop and.
But Ryan also says pecan, so don't trust him.
Yeah, Ryan does say pecan.
It is pecan, and I will die on
that. Oh God, we're not getting onto this.
We're not getting into that stupid conversation again. You're wrong.
Pecan, motherfucker.
Lord,
go ahead.
Wrong.
Well, when the Israelites sent spies into Canaan, they returned with fearful reports. They claimed to have seen descendants of the Nephilim so large and terrifying that the spies said, quote, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." If these accounts are true, then the flood did not end the bloodline. It merely scattered it. Now, these stories, they do not shout. They whisper. They suggest that somewhere in the human family tree, branches still twist in unnatural directions. They imply that the corruption buried by the flood may have continued in secret, hidden within lineages that walk among us unnoticed. And if the bloodline survived, what else might it have carried forward? If the Nephilim bloodline endured, it would not have disappeared quietly into the countryside. After all, power seeks power. And in the ancient world, power meant kingship. Many cultures believed that their rulers were chosen by the gods or descended directly from them. This belief formed the foundation of divine right, the idea that royal blood was not only noble, but sacred. Yet what if some of that blood was not merely divine, but something else entirely? Now, in medieval Europe, stories began to surface about kings and queens who descended from supernatural beings. While some traced their lineage back to gods, others were whispered to descend from demons. These tales were not official histories, but lived on through rumors, legends, and symbols hidden in coats of arms, architectural designs, and bloodline records. Now, one dynasty in particular has captured the attention of historian and conspiracy theorists alike: the Merovingians. They ruled parts of what are now France and Germany during the early medieval period, beginning in the 5th century. Unlike other royal houses, the origin of the Merovingians was cloaked with myth, and it is within that myth that things begin to take a darker turn. Now, according to their founding legend, the dynasty began when the wife of Clodio, an early Frankish leader, was impregnated by a sea creature while bathing. Some describe this being as a quinotar, a five-horned beast with divine or demonic attributes. Their child, Meravec, was said to be of dual origin, part human, part otherworldly. Now, this creature from the sea was more than just a mere myth, because across ancient cultures, the sea symbolized the abyss, the unknowable, the place of chaos and spiritual mystery. To be born of it was to be born from a realm beyond the natural world. The Merovingians embraced this identity. They claimed to possess supernatural abilities. Some sources suggest they experienced prophetic dreams, possessed healing powers, or could even command animals. To many of their contemporaries, they seemed touched by forces beyond ordinary human comprehension. Whether divine or unclean depended on who told the story. Now, their symbolism was equally unusual. The Merovingians often used the bee as a sacred symbol. Archaeologists actually discovered 300 golden bees in the tomb of Cloderic I, one of the earliest Merovingian kings. Now, bees are an uncommon symbol of royalty. Unlike lions or eagles, they do not represent brute strength or earthly dominion. Instead, they suggest order, mystery, and an esoteric power that governs quietly from within. Centuries later, Napoleon would adopt the bee as his imperial emblem, believing it connected him to the Merovingian legacy. Even the appearance of the Merovingian kings carried deep meaning. They were known as the long-haired kings, and their hair was considered sacred. Cutting it was seen as stripping them of their authority. Now, this belief does echo the story of Samson in the Bible, whose strength was bound to his hair, a trait some have linked to ancient bloodlines marked by divine or even unnatural origins. Hints of the Merovingians' strange heritage appear in the art and architecture as well. Early Christian churches built under their rule often featured carvings of serpents, beasts, and composite creatures. Now, these motives, later condemned or erased by more orthodox powers, suggest that the dynasty embraced symbols of hybrid beings and otherworldly ancestry. Modern fringe theorists have now woven these fragments into a broader and more controversial narrative. They claim that the Merovingians were part of an unbroken bloodline, carefully protected and hidden throughout history. Some have even linked them to the Priory of Sion, the Holy Grail, and even to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, though these theories lack support from traditional historical evidence. Still, the idea persists that the Merovingians were more than just human rulers, that their blood carried something ancient, something powerful, something not entirely of this world. And if their bloodline survived, then so might the inheritance that came with it. Now, these ideas often blur the line between theology and conspiracy, but they all point back to the same unsettling possibility, that humanity's rulers may have been shaped not only by politics or war, but by bloodlines older than civilization itself. And it's not only European dynasties that draw this kind of speculation. Legends from Mesopotamia speak of divine kings who descended from heavens. Ancient Egypt proclaimed that its pharaohs were gods in human form. And the Sumerian king list records reigns lasting thousands of years, far beyond the lifespan of any mortal ruler. And in every case, the same pattern emerges. The rulers of Earth possess something within their veins that set them apart, something not entirely human. Whether through Nephilim descent, demonic pacts, or ancient covenants with forgotten beings, the underlying idea remains the same. Power is preserved in blood. And if that blood still exists in the world today, the question remains, who carries it now? So while kings and nobles may have cloaked their bloodlines in claims of divine right, others carried the burden of corruption more openly. Not all who were believed to descend from unnatural unions were placed upon thrones. Some were cast out, feared by their communities, and hunted through the centuries. Now, during the medieval period, as Christian doctrine spread and solidified across Europe, new categories of heresy and superstition took shape. Among the most feared was the witch. Not simply a woman with strange talents, but a person suspected of inherited evil. Accusations of witchcraft were rarely about isolated acts. They were about lineage. Communities whispered that certain families had always been different, that daughters and sons born into those lines possessed gifts they should not have had. They spoke of those who could predict death, heal without explanation, speak with spirits, and curse in a mere glance. These abilities were rarely seen as divine. Instead, they were often interpreted as marks of a darker ancestry. In early Christian demonology, many believed that demons still interacted with mortals, not openly as angels once had, but in secrecy, through seduction and shadow. Tales of incubi and succubi, demons who sought to breed with humans, fed fears of hybrid offspring born in isolation and silence. And yes, I will be getting into those later on. They're just merely mentioned now. These children did not appear monstrous. They looked human enough to pass, but they were strange. They were quiet, detached, sometimes brilliant, sometimes violent, and always marked by an unexplainable difference. Historical records from witch trials across Europe occasionally hint at these lingering fears. In Germany, a woman accused of witchcraft claimed she was the seventh daughter of a seventh daughter born during a thunderstorm under a cursed moon. She had no birthmark, no familiar spirit, no cauldron. Yet the villagers swore that her eyes glowed red when seen by candlelight. In Scotland, a boy was said to have healed a dying animal with a single touch. When questioned, he claimed the knowledge had come to him in a dream, gifted by a voice that spoke from his bloodline. Even the Malleus Maleficarum, the infamous witch hunting manual published in 1487, hinted at the belief that some witches did not learn their craft but were born to it. It spoke of inherited evil passed through generations like a hidden disease. And the fear extended beyond strange talents to physical deformities as well. Children born with missing limbs, fused fingers, or unusual birthmarks were sometimes believed to carry demonic blood. Such signs were not seen as medical anomalies, but as evidence of divine punishment or the lingering aftermath of a forbidden union. The church's stance was clear. If a person's power did not come from God, it came from something else. And so generation after generation, families suspected of unnatural inheritance were persecuted, burned, or forced into the shadows. But the whispers never died. Stories persisted of families who lived deep in the hills and forests, who avoided the towns, who buried their dead at night and taught their children in secret. It was said that their blood carried a spark no longer fully human. Whether passed down through demons, watchers, or forces even older, the corruption of the Nephilim had not been erased. It had simply retreated into the hidden corners of the world. By the early modern period, open belief in the Nephilim had faded. The church no longer taught their story, and texts like the Book of Enoch were labeled heretical or quietly forgotten. Yet the idea of forbidden bloodlines, of ancient corruption surviving within humanity, never entirely disappeared. In private libraries and secluded scholarly circles, apocryphal texts resurfaced. During the Renaissance, scholars unearthed writings from early Christianity and Second Temple Judaism. The Book of Enoch, long suppressed in the West, was rediscovered in the 18th century when a copy was found preserved in Ethiopia and translated into English. Its account of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the judgment that followed gained new attention. No longer treated purely as mythology, it began to be considered a record of lost prehistory. Philosophers and early scientists during the Enlightenment took an interest in these stories, wondering whether myths might contain fragments of forgotten truths. The notion of divine or angelic interference in human development moved beyond theology and entered the realm of speculative anthropology. And by the 19th century, stories of ancient giants and unknown races were appearing in local histories and newspapers, especially across North America. Reports surfaced of oversized skeletons unearthed in burial mounds across the Midwest, measuring 7 to 10 feet in height. These discoveries fed into the growing belief that remnants of a lost race still lingered in the archaeological record. Although many of these reports were dismissed by mainstream academics, they were preserved in archives, passed quietly into the hands of private collectors and secretive societies. During the same period, new religious and philosophical movements emerged. Theosophy, founded by Helena Blavatsky, wonderful woman. Sorry, I can't wait to get in her.
That is a whole fucking thing with her. That woman is...
She's an interesting woman.
Yeah, very enigmatic.
Yeah. Well, Theosophy, founded by Helena Blavatsky, promoted the idea that humanity had passed through multiple evolutionary ages. Blavatsky and her followers spoke of ancient races that were hybrids of divine and human origin, beings of enormous stature and intellect, now either lost or hidden. Though the term Nephilim was not used directly, the descriptions offered by these movements were hauntingly familiar. The idea remained that somewhere in the distant past, something had entered humanity's bloodline, and perhaps it had never fully left. In the early 20th century, secret societies and esoteric orders such as the Golden Dawn, the Rosicrucian, and the Freemasons quietly wove references to ancient bloodlines and forgotten wisdom into their rituals and teachings. Their symbolism often pointed toward a hidden ancestry, a legacy that set initiates apart from the common masses. In many of these traditions, knowledge was revered as power, but blood was seen as the key to unlocking it. Even fringe scientists and writers of the early 1900s explored the idea that human history had been shaped by intervention from non-human intelligences. Before the modern UFO movement took form, there were already books proposing that certain families, isolated tribes, or elite groups carried traits that could not be explained by human evolution alone, including intelligence beyond their era, resilience beyond natural limits, or spiritual authority that defied simple explanation. Through all these traditions and speculations, one belief remained constant, that some lineages were not entirely human and never had been. These were no longer just myths. They became threads, sometimes faint, sometimes bold, woven through theology, science, archaeology, and esoteric thought. And in the shadow of these traditions, that one question still remained unanswered. What if the blood of the Watchers had not been wiped away, but had simply learned to blend in? If those ancient bloodlines survived, then what form might they take when they surfaced again? Now, for centuries, stories have circulated about children born under strange and unsettling circumstances. This is the part that I talked about earlier. For those of y'all who feel bad or get triggered or uncomfortable with physical deformities and stuff. So we're getting into that point here. But for centuries, stories have circulated about children born under strange and unsettling circumstances. Infants with no earthly fathers, children born during eclipses, and those marked by deformities that defy natural explanation were not seen as accidents, but as signs, warnings that something had crossed into the world once again. In the demonological texts of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, these figures, the figures of incubi and succubi, evolved. They were no longer described simply as tempters of the flesh, but as agents of reproduction. Theologists like Thomas Aquinas wrote extensively on the possibility that demons could facilitate the creation of hybrid offspring. The belief emerged that an incubus could collect the seed of man, pass it to a succubus, and implant it into a woman, resulting in a child born from deception and spirit. This was no longer treated as a metaphor. At this point, it was considered serious theological doctrine. Accounts began to surface across Europe of strange births attributed to such unions. In 1639 in southern France, a woman claimed that she had been visited repeatedly in her sleep by a figure she described as a man made of shadow. She later gave birth to a child with fused fingers, black eyes, and skin that never darkened under the sun. The child died young, yes, but the story lived on, perfectly preserved in church records beneath a heading simply marked, quote, superstition or sorcery, question mark. This was not an isolated incident or account. Medical texts from the 15th and 16th centuries contained many descriptions of monstrous births. Some spoke of infants born with tails, hooves, or extra limbs. Others mentioned children who never cried, who aged too quickly, or who vanished days after birth. Now today, many of these cases would be attributed to genetic abnormalities or prenatal trauma. At the time, however, they were seen as proof that something had gone terribly wrong in the bloodline, or that something unseen had entered the womb. In early modern demonology, these hybrid offspring were sometimes called cambions. They were described as cunning, emotionally detached, and unnervingly beautiful in ways that felt unnatural. God, is that me? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was going to say, can you say that again? Tell me what they were called one more time.
Cambions, C-A-M-B-I-O-N-S.
Cambions. Okay.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever heard that word. That's why I was curious.
It was the first time that I came across it as well. I never heard it either.
So you have these what now now we know that the aging is progeria, and we know that ectrodactyly is the fusing of the fingers, and yeah, but then it in demonic possession, which we know that's not the case. It's just a genetic anomaly. Right. Okay. I'm with
Yeah.
you. Say the word for it again. What are they called again?
Cambions, Cambions.
Thank you. I just
Now
learned a
that
new word.
and
Yeah.
that's early modern demonology that
Mhm.
they started calling that, and that's the hybrid offspring between human and demon. Go ahead, Ryan.
I do gotta say, so far it sounds like a whole lot of I can't explain it, so it's gotta be demons.
It's got to be
Coming
the
from-
devil. That's right.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, at the time when all of this is
Right.
going on, the devil is very real. The devil is out to
Right.
get you, and the devil is lurking around every corner. That's the
Mhm.
mentality of these communities. The devil is in everything, you know.
Right.
He's a
Well, and
constant.
I think that's interesting because I know that there are, and I believe it is it's in India somewhere, and the location's escaping me. You can look it up. That they predict the next, basically, spiritual leader if they're born with a tail. That's like the next, that's like the holy of holies. So what one, group considers a terrible thing. Another one says, "Oh, this is our most spiritual." One considers it a sign of demonic possession, or a sign of demon blood. The other one says this makes you the most holy of holies. And so, yeah, look that up. That seems like there was a big thing about it about 15 years ago when there was a child that was born that had basically what looked to be a partial tail. And if I can remember the name, I'll tell you it.
I think you are right. I think it is all about perspective. It just depends on what way you're looking at it, like what the theological background you come from or lack thereof. I think I'm with you on that, Shelley. So
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Well, in the folklore of the time, Cambions were often blamed for madness within families, the failure of crops, and the spread of unexplainable deaths. And suspicion did not always fall solely on the child. In some of the most chilling accounts, it was the mother who was accused, not of subduction, but of complicity. The belief grew that certain women, knowingly or unknowingly, had served as vessels for something not of this world. Their blood, their dreams, or their lineage had drawn darkness towards them. This fear transcended borders as well. In Russia, legends told of changelings and spirit children born to women with cursed wombs. In India, regional texts describe children born during eclipses as marked, seen either as divine or dangerous, depending on the celestial signs. In West Africa, tales spoke of spirit-born children, often born with forbidden knowledge and doomed to violent fates. And the pattern is persistent across cultures and eras. A being crosses through the veil during sleep, ritual, or trauma and leaves behind a child who does not quite belong. Now, today, many treat these stories as folklore, but for those who lived them, they were not stories. They were explanations for the unexplainable. And if the bloodline of the Nephilim continued in secret, this is how it survived. Not through royal dynasties or theological doctrines, but in the quiet places, in beds, in wombs, in the stillness after birth, when the midwife would pause, cross herself, and say nothing at all. If the Nephilim bloodline could not be traced through names or records, then perhaps it could be recognized in the body itself. Throughout history, infants born with visible differences were viewed with awe, suspicion, or fear. In a world where birth was sacred and life was fragile, any deviation from the expected was seen as a message, sometimes from God, but more often from something far darker. The medieval mind believed that the body reflected the soul. A twisted body was seen as evidence of a twisted lineage. And an infant born with fused limbs, missing eyes, or additional digits might be declared a monster, not out of cruelty, but out of theological certainty. These fears were neither rare nor isolated. In 1511, a pamphlet circulated in Germany describing the birth of a child with a horned head, a scaled back, and no discernible gender. The text framed the child as a warning, a divine indictment of the sin present in the land. The image spread across Europe, not as a medical curiosity, but as a proclamation of divine judgment. Now, such children were rarely allowed to live long. Some were hidden away, others were quietly buried, but always they were marked, not simply as flawed, but as cursed. And in some cases, the mother herself was blamed for lying down with demons, consorting with witches, or bearing the sin of her ancestors. The Malleus Maleficarum that witch hunting manual even dedicated sections to the demonic corruption of the womb. Its authors argued that demons could influence a child's formation from conception to birth, twisting the body as an act of mockery against God. In this view, the child was not merely unfortunate. It was the living proof of an invisible sin. The church was not alone in treating the body as a spiritual canvas. Across early modern Europe, natural philosophers, which are the precursors to scientists, began cataloging so-called, quote, monstrous births in private collections and encyclopedias. Cabinets of curiosities displayed preserved fetuses with conjoined limbs, multiple heads, or tails. These specimens were rarely treated with compassion. They were collected as objects of horror, placed alongside bones, religious relics, and masks as a grim reminder of what happens when the natural order is violated. But what broke that order? Many believed it was a stain carried in the blood, a remnant of something ancient, a cursed union, something hidden within generations waiting to surface in the wrong child at the wrong time. This belief crossed oceans and continents. In early American settlements, colonial ministers recorded strange births as omens. One account from 1671 describes a child born, quote, gray of skin with fingers like claws and teeth at birth. And the record ends simply with, quote, buried before sundown, mother not named. Even by the 19th century, when medical science had begun to frame these anomalies in biological terms, the language of sin and corruption endured. In rural areas, physical deformities remained linked to spiritual consequence. Some midwives refused to deliver children born under certain moon or stars, claiming they had seen, quote, too many unnatural ones come from such sites. And there is something primal about the fear of the broken body. It embodies not just the terror of the unknown, but the deeper horror that evil does not always arrive as a shadow or a whisper. Sometimes it is born. Sometimes it cries before it can speak, and sometimes it grows teeth before it learns a name. Yet the Nephilim bloodline survived. This is its mark and how it endured. Not only through ancient dynasties or forbidden rites, but through flesh made strange, through bodies that portrayed a secret even the parents could not name. And in the silence that followed, that midwife's gasp, something ancient may have stirred, not in wrath, not in judgment, but in recognition. But not all unnatural births were seen as accidents. Some were sought out. Across cultures and centuries, there have been rituals designed to open the womb to forces that were not human. Rarely spoken of publicly, the fragments that survive suggest a disturbing reality, that in some cases, conception itself was transformed into the act of summoning. In many ancient traditions, the timing of birth was believed to shape the soul. A child born during an eclipse or a blood moon might be marked as chosen or cursed. In the regions of Mesopotamia and Anatolia, clay tablets described rituals for, quote, star-born children, aligning conception with planetary movements and celestial omens. Though the texts are fragmentary, they hint at a belief that cosmic alignments could invite otherworldly influences into the forming body. And by the rise of early Kabbalistic mysticism, practitioners taught that sexual union under certain astrological conditions could produce souls not meant for the mortal world. The Zohar, a foundational text of Jewish mysticism, speaks in cryptic tones of souls descending not from heaven, but from, quote, dark places that exist beneath the divine realm. These souls, it warns, seek flesh, and they are not always denied. European grimoires from the 15th and 17th centuries provide even more unsettling details. Within their pages are instructions for rituals intended to produce children with supernatural traits. Some involved summoning spirits or demons, offering sacrifices, or reciting sacred prayers in reverse at the moment of climax. The aim was not possession. It was procreation. I could just imagine Ryan with his next date, right as she climaxes, and she's like,
yes, let me read the scripture. As you way to put a damper on the bedroom.
If he can talk, he ain't doing it right.
That's all that went through my head was just.
Just saying.
Be careful, Ryan, when her eyes go rolling in the back of her head. It may not be what you think. She might be whispering something under her breath, buddy.
Like, all right, I'm the man. Oh my God.
I think if one of the three of us were going to have a demon child, it would definitely be Ryan.
I think it would too. Yeah.
Well, Ryan's not having kids, so
it would be retribution for how mean he is. Oh, Lord. Well, the rites were designed to draw down something ancient, to bind it into human form. Some ceremonies demanded that conception take place on liminal nights, Samhain, or Walpurgisnacht, or nights of black moons, when the sky was empty and unseen. In these traditions, darkness was not feared. It was honored, and it was seen as fertile ground. And what was conceived under its watch might be unlike anything born in the light. In rural Balkan folklore, stories tell of women who bore, quote, night children. Infants who grew teeth within months, spoke full sentences by their first year, or cast no shadows under the sun. These children were said to have been conceived during thunderstorms or within sacred groves, places where the veil between worlds grew thin. Some families hid them away, but others abandoned them in forests, believing they belonged to someone or something else. Even Christian exorcists occasionally encountered individuals believed to have been born, quote, open, conceived during rituals, cursed unions, or under spiritual duress. These cases resisted traditional prayers as if did not resist traditional prayers, as if the spirit did not enter from the outside, but had been there from the very beginning. Modern scholars often dismiss these accounts as cultural attempts to explain trauma surrounding childbirth or deformity. Yet the frequency and consistency of these tales across regions, cultures, and centuries is difficult to ignore. And the signs are almost always the same. A child born during a storm, a newborn who does not cry, eyes that shine unnaturally in the dark, a body that feels too cold to the touch. Again, not all of these children survived. Some were hidden, some were destroyed. But some were kept, raised, protected, and in certain traditions, revered. For those who performed these rites, the goal was not simply to bring life into the world. This is the big that I found this. I was like, oh, that makes more sense. Mm-hmm. It was not to simply bring life into the world. It is to bring something back. They are not creating something new. They are reopening a door. The Nephilim bloodline, waiting in the shadows, in tombs, and in forgotten names, found its path home through flesh, through ritual, and through the willing hands of those who remembered what the rest of the world had tried to forget. And the rites may have faded, the names may have been lost, but the belief never truly died. For all the drowned giants, the buried offspring, and the cursed bloodlines, one truth remains, that humanity never stopped telling these stories. They just began telling them differently. So today, we rarely speak of the Watchers or the Nephilim by name. Instead, we speak of other things. Figures that visit in the night, beings that mingle with humanity, children whose origin defy explanation. The words have changed, but the fears remain. And even now, the world seems shadowed by something that does not quite fit, something that lingers on the margins of belief, something that remembers what it once was. In the modern age, the ancient language of angels and demons has been replaced by the vocabulary of science fiction. Yet beneath that surface, the story remains hauntingly familiar. Since the mid-20th century, reports of alien abductions have spread across the globe. The details vary, but the themes are remarkably consistent. Beings descending from the sky, entering homes under cover of darkness, paralyzing their victims, and performing reproductive procedures. Eggs are harvested, semen extracted, embryos implanted, and children created, only to be removed before they can be known. To many, these accounts are nothing more than fantasy or delusion. But within the subcultures of abductees and UFO researchers, there is a belief that refuses to fade, one that echoes something much older. They speak of hybrids, children born not entirely of this world. These beings are often described as pale, ethereal, and distant. Some are said to appear in dreams, visiting the women who bore them. Others emerge in waking life, watching silently from a distance, but never drawing near. They do not speak, and they do not seem to age. pattern is eerily familiar. Just as the Watchers descended from the heavens to take human women, abductees describe beings who arrive without invitation, violate boundaries, and vanish without a trace. And just as the Nephilim were said to be children of unnatural strength and insight, modern hybrids are rumored to possess heightened intelligence, psychic sensitivity, and physical perfection. And in both stories, these offsprings are not accidents. They are the result of something deliberate. Now, the Book of Enoch warned that the Nephilim would persist into the final days. Some theorists now claim that hybrid programs, whether spiritual or scientific, are part of a long-standing effort to reintroduce a bloodline that was meant to be erased. In this interpretation, the so-called aliens are not extraterrestrial at all. They are interdimensional, Ryan's favorite word, spiritual beings that ancient cultures would have called angels or demons. Jacques Vallée, a respected voice in UFO research, once said, quote, "The entities are not extraterrestrial in the ordinary sense of the term. They are the denizens of another reality." Now, for those who hold this view, the hybrid phenomenon is not a modern development. It is a return, a resumption of something ancient in a form adapted to new eyes. The tools have changed, the language has shifted, but the intent remains. Someone or something is still trying to create children that do not belong. And perhaps as before, they are succeeding. Now, not every encounter results in a child. Some entities leave behind something else: paralysis, confusion, an overwhelming sense of violation, a feeling that a line was crossed in the night, one that was never meant to be touched. Often it begins the same way. A weight settles on the chest, the limbs refuse to move, the voice is frozen in silence, and somewhere in the room, just out of sight, something watches. Across cultures, the experience has been named and renamed: the old hag, Kanashtibari, Pisadiera, shadow people. But the core is always the same. The presence enters, the body becomes still, the moment lingers, unnatural and terrifying. Modern science calls this sleep paralysis, attributing it to neurological misfires during REM sleep. Yet those who experience it insist it is more than that. They do not describe a dream. They describe an encounter. They do not remember imagining a figure in the corner of the room. They remember feeling it. What they describe matches ancient accounts with unsettling precision. In medieval demonology, these visitations were attributed to the incubi and succubi, entities that targeted the sleeping to feed, seduce, or impregnate. Theologians debated their nature, but many believed they could manipulate the physical world. Some warned that such beings could extract seed, implant offspring, and leave behind a spiritual mark that never healed. Now, the comparisons are difficult to ignore. Many modern experiencers speak of sensations of touch, of unexplainable dread, of something being taken that they cannot name. Some wake with bruises or scratches they cannot explain, and others report pregnancy symptoms that end in silence. No child, no medical explanation, only a lingering absence. And the beings themselves are not always grotesque. They are often described as tall and thin, with elongated limbs and eyes that reflect light in unnatural ways. They do not move like humans. They do not speak, but they are present in a way that is deeply and intimately felt. They resemble the Watchers, not monstrous, but transgressive. Their crime was not violence, it was intrusion. They crossed into a place that was meant to remain sacred. And sleep paralysis may not be a glitch in the brain. It may be an echo of something older, a remnant behavior passed down through generations of beings who once sought union with humankind. Researchers like David J. Huford have argued that these experiences are too consistent to be dismissed as mere dreams. He describes sleep paralysis as a cultural script, a pattern embedded in human experience by something ancient and something very real. Whether you call it a demon, a visitor, or something older still, the result is the same. It enters, it touches, it leaves. Now, not every Nephilim child was born in the flesh. Some have been spiritual. Some unions may still be happening. And if the Watchers were punished for defiling the human bloodline, perhaps their descendants have simply learned to return in quieter ways. Not in daylight, not in laboratories, but in the silence of the night, where the mind is open and the veil is thin. Even now, in a world that dismisses angels as metaphor and demons as myth, there are those who believe the bloodline endures. They do not speak publicly. These are not institutions. They are loose networks, fragments of belief held in occult orders, online cults, and secretive faiths that claim something ancient still walks among us. Some say it survives in flesh, others say it waits in spirit, but all agree on one point. It has not disappeared. In the early 20th century, as esoteric movements gained traction, many began to fixate on hidden lineages. Theosophists, Rosicrucian, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn claimed to preserve ancient wisdom passed down from pre-flood civilizations. They spoke of being part divine, part human, whose bloodlines were protected by hidden masters across history. While the Nephilim were rarely mentioned by name, the descriptions were familiar. Beings of immense wisdom and power, once fallen, destined to return. And later fringe groups expanded these claims. The Priory of Sion, whose very existence remains in question, was said to have safeguarded a divine bloodline for centuries. Some believe it traced not just to biblical kings, but directly to the Nephilim themselves. These stories filtered into conspiracy theorists, fringe religions, and pop culture, merging into a vast mythological current. Online communities now devote themselves entirely to the idea that the Nephilim descendants walk among us. Some claim the ruling class carries this blood, their authority not merely inherited, but spiritual. Others suggest that ancient covenants still protect them, that their DNA holds something unspoken and set apart. And some go even further. They believe they themselves are the descendants. They speak of inherited dreams, strange abilities, and deep ancestral memories. Some call themselves hybrids. Others believe they are reincarnated watchers, returning in human form. There are even groups who perform rituals to reactivate the bloodline. They speak Enochian. They study forbidden texts. They search for spiritual gates and ancestral resonance, believing that what was lost in the flood can be summoned again. Now, to outsiders, it sounds like fantasy, but to them, it is sacred history. One former initiate claimed she had been trained to recognize others like her by their aura, their energy, and their dreams. Another spoke of a community that believed the spirits of the Nephilim were preparing to return, and that the next generation of children would carry their essence. In darker corners, there are whispers that modern science is complicit, that gene editing tools, artificial wombs, and cloning research are part of something more than progress, that they are being used to rebuild what was destroyed, to restore the bloodline. Some point to the reappearance of ancient symbols in politics, architecture, and ritual. They say the Nephilim are not rising from the earth, but they are rising through institutions, technologies, and ideologies quietly, patiently, and persistently. And through it all, those same questions echo. If the bloodline was meant to be destroyed, why has it been protected? Why do its names still appear in sacred texts and secret doctrines? Why did the same symbols keep returning? And whether you believe these things or not, someone does, but they were never meant to survive. The flood was sent to erase them. The chains were forged to bind their fathers. The world was scoured clean to destroy the bloodline. That was the plan. But something went wrong. The stories never stopped. The symbols never faded. The blood kept moving generation to generation. We may have buried the word Nephilim beneath centuries of doctrine, folklore, and denial, but it still breathes under different names. It wears different faces, and it lives in places no flood could reach. And if you listen long enough, if you follow these stories far enough, you may realize something that cannot be unlearned. The line never broke. It adapted.
There you go.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun!
All right. Question.
Yeah, I know you're going to have them. Fire away.
So did you find anything about, because you said, after the flood died, not flood died, but after the flood hit and all of the race of giants died, but the Bible also says that they continued to exist. Did you find anything about Goliath being a descendant of the Nephilim at all?
No, actually, I didn't know that you mentioned that.
Yeah, because he's like the most famous giant in the Bible.
Well, I mean, it would. Yeah, I mean, okay, you could. Could you assume? Absolutely. Did I ever find anything that tied it directly? No, I did not.
Right. And because you were talking about seeking power, I know he was like the champion of the Philistines. So
yeah,
that I didn't know if there was any connection to the previous race of giants or not.
Not that I came across.
Okay.
But I mean, if we're talking about the Nephilim and being there before Genesis, after Genesis. I mean, I don't know. One could assume, that if we're talking giants and tying giants to the Nephilim, that there would be some sort of connection at some point along the lineage. Right. I mean, to me, it would only make sense.
That, or he was just a really big dude. He's not necessarily. I don't know. I mean, but I had heard that theory about them being what we consider to be aliens now, and them, performing the experiments. I mean, and like, there's nothing that we know of the ancient Nephilim or whatever you want to call them, that we don't know what their technology was like. So if they were able to survive, and this is what we're experiencing now, that is a very interesting theory.
It's really interesting when you start going all the way back from the Book of Enoch until now, and you start to follow this thread of how could the bloodline have survived? Because we have the line in Genesis that says, and after that, which is oh my God, if you want to go look up some wonderful debates, just go search Genesis 6:4 and look at the debates that are out there about just Genesis 6:4. But those like 4 words, and after 3 words, and after that, and after that. Yeah, those 3 words. I had to count. Don't laugh at me, Shelley.
I didn't say anything.
It just sparked such a major debate. And if you take from those 3 words on and you go through the Bible, you go through power seeking power, tie yourself into the Merovingians. It's after the Merovingians that it starts to get pushed to the outside. Because after the Merovingians started doing all that stuff and leaning into their identity that, oh yeah, we come from something not natural, very unnatural.
Those are the people who wouldn't cut their hair, right?
Yeah, and so it starts to get pushed to the fringe community, and that's where we at that point, start to see the witches come in and all of this stuff. And you can see how this bloodline really could have survived. That if this blood is out there, you can weave it through the timeline, through human history. I don't know. I'm one of those that whenever I read scripture, and I'm researching scripture and stuff like that, like I want all of it. That's why I love the Book of Enoch, because it's kind of like pre-scripture, if you will, so to speak, because it's not really included in the official biblical canon, but it was at one point. That's the thing. And when we get down to the bottom of this, in my opinion, this is my opinion, obviously I went through the different regions and we're telling you about different things that were happening, the different names that they're giving it and all that kind of stuff. We're all talking about the same thing. I mean, we're all discussing the same thing. We're all just putting it under a different name. That's the thing.
Right.
I mean, as a spiritual person, communing with nature or whatever, grounding, spell work, it's the same as prayer work, just as like with the Nephilim giants. Anyways, I could go on and on about all that shit.
So in the comments, Chad said that there are accounts written of events and that the age puts some people over 900 years old, like Methuselah, and that there are all sorts of documented timelines of people that had exceptionally long lives. So this is something that, again, not the medical abilities that we have now, which, I mean, it's good if we get someone to 100 years old. That's quite an accomplishment. But 900, there has to have been something that was going on in that. And something I found interesting was that you had said that in the newer theories of the bloodline changing, that it mirrors alien abductions and or experiencers, and that they knew how to recognize each other. I found that fascinating only because of the experience that I had at Medicon with that girl grabbing me by the arm, never seen her before, spinning me around and said, "I know what you are." And I'm like irritated with this conversation. What? And said that she knew what I was, that I was a cat alien, and that I wasn't fooling her. That was just very, I mean, and hell, I'm 371 years old. So, I mean, it absolutely could be that, but I found that fascinating. I really just thought that, maybe she had couple of drinks at the bar before she came to the, Paracon, but Just the way she grabbed my arm and
Well-
spun me around. I didn't even say hello, and I did not know who she was. And I literally was walking past her.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa, hello. Why do you have a hold of me? Turn loose.
Well, but see, and that's and that, you know, I mean, if you look at, you could go into certain things of like, if you want to pull in the alien abduction thing like I did, and we
Right.
talk about that, and this being the new form, quote unquote, of Nephilim, if that's the route that we're going, look back at certain paintings and stuff like that from a long time ago where they have these odd disc shapes in the background. You know, that what
Mhm.
were they? You talk about the Anunnaki, you know,
Mhm.
these beliefs that the gods back then were aliens that descended from the stars. I mean, if we
Mhm.
have that, and then we have these hybrid programs nowadays, like how do we not compare those? Because if you're having the
Yeah,
same
and
thing
Chad says
happen
that
back then, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and Chad put in the comments that the ancient accounts of these people from the stars, they're described as tall beings, just like you had
Yeah.
said. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look
So-
at all the petroglyphs out west, and like the people who talk about the star people coming down. They all describe the same thing across all of these cultures, dealing with whatever this was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So
it's going to
also-
all depend on where you stand in your own belief system of what do you believe happened with the
Mhm.
flood. When it comes to the flood, what do you believe
Mhm.
is the reason for the flood? Do you believe it was the reason for mankind's sin, or do you believe that it was a purge of certain wickedness? Because,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to flat out say it, if you follow the King James Bible, Genesis 6:4 is going to say that there were giants in the earth that day. If you go back to a Hebrew Bible or even older versions of that, you are going to find there were Nephilim in the earth that day. So if you're going to follow scripture, we know that they existed. It's just that terms are going to be switched. That's why I always say, whichever version you follow, fine. But if you want to go back and read the original manuscript for it, read where your version comes from and figure out that there are terms that have been changed. Giants was Nephilim. Screech Owl was Lilith. When I did the Lilith episode,
Mhm.
Lilith appears in the Bible. May not the translated version that you have sitting on your bookshelf, but in the Hebrew text, she does. You know,
Mhm.
so I don't know. I kind of believe, I would like to believe that there was this big massive flood that purged the earth. You know, and it's because of the Nephilim.
Mhm.
well,
I-
and
I-
if you look at
Well-
ancient Egyptian gods in particular,
Mhm.
a lot of them are half human, half animal. Which
Yeah.
that was one of the things you touched
Right.
on, was that some of
Yep.
the Nephilim bred with animals as well.
Yep.
I think that's very interesting, and the Egyptian, they worship the sun god, and there are strange hieroglyphs that look otherworldly. In the hieroglyphs. I was going hieroglyphs, petroglyphs, hieroglyphs. Took me a second. Too many glyphs. Too much
Too many
anxiety.
glyphs.
Yeah. But anyway, that's interesting, because if you take that story and you go ahead and you put it with some of the symbols we know to be things that were worshipped, even other countries, other eras, other
Mhm.
dynasties, a lot of them, even in India, you have let's see, you have the woman with all the arms,
Shiva.
Ganesh, Shiva,
I
yes,
think. Mhm.
and then you have Ganesh, which is the elephant,
Mhm.
and I believe those are the three biggies.
What was the third one?
Krishna.
Krishna. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I think I got them all. Took me a second. I was going back in my mind way back to in the Wayback Machine to when I took world religions. So
Mhm.
yeah, there are a lot of animals, animal human hybrid, listed, among gods of other religions. So
Mhm.
I mean, could that give the Nephilim story some credibility? Maybe.
Right. And
Why
like
not? Let's roll with it.
all the ancient cultures have a very similar flood story. So something clearly happened across the
That's
entire
what I
Earth.
see. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like,
Mhm.
if you start looking at, oh, I'm getting a bad feedback on somebody.
Is it
I don't
me?
know.
Probably.
Is it still going?
I don't
No.
think so. Anyways, no, we're good now. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you look, obviously, I think something happened, because if you look at all different kinds of traditions and religious beliefs and stuff like that, you have the same shit that happened across different cultures and different areas and beliefs and traditions. It's all coming basically from the same place. It's the same story. We're just calling it different shit. So I believe that something happened. And I do believe that it was to wipe out basically let's just say it was the first, when you get an easy bake oven and you try to make your easy bake thing for the first time, you end up burning it and you trash it. That's what the flood was. I don't know. I did an easy bake whenever I was a little kid. And I was like, I'm going to cook a cake by this fucking light bulb, damn it. Mainly the dough just went in my mouth before it made the pan.
Yeah, I'd never got one that was completely cooked. I don't know.
No.
Yeah, but if you think about it, Chad even mentions the stories of the Greeks. I mean, Zeus impregnated damn near any human woman he got. Everything, every child from him.
Well, you covered Aphrodite, and was she not made from sea foam or something like that?
Yes, exactly.
From the abyss of the sea foam.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. A lot of these cultures are saying the exact same fucking thing, but I think that there had to be something prehistory to current mankind, whatever you want to call it, humanity, if you will. I do believe that there was some type of attempt beforehand that had to be wiped out. There's too many stories and traditions and beliefs and cultures that have the marking of the flood. So yeah, I do believe in that story, and I do believe it was to purge the earth. Because I do believe in a higher entity, that we are created in that image. What I call it, I have no idea, but that's just me. So yeah, I do think that there was a flood that wiped them out. So I do believe the story of the Nephilim, and I do believe to this day that they are still surviving.
Yeah, I am. I'm right here. Quit talking to me like that.
Not only because of what I just went through and piecing it together for how it could have survived, but also there are those out there who are actively trying to bring it back. We've talked plenty of times about summoning demons and demonic entities and all that kind of shit on this channel. So, yeah.
Well, anyways, like my ears perked up when you were talking about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I mean, Aleister Crowley was a prominent member in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And if you look at his life and what he was trying to do, he worked with angels and trying to bring them to Earth all the time. So maybe he was part of that, trying to facilitate that bloodline coming back to the Earth. But I think that the thing that makes the most sense to me is if it is happening, it's the whole alien hybrid theory. I think that makes the most sense versus like the more ritualistic aspect of it. I guess because that's the one I can kind of sink my teeth into the most because I know the most about that. And it just seems to be more plausible to me than, stewards of the bloodline, like taking it across across time. But yeah, so I think if it is true, I'm going to go with that one.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm with you. I have to go with the summoning type shit just because I see aliens and spiritual beings as two separate entities. That's just me. So I think that I'm going to have to go. I don't see how I can understand and how you get there. But for me, I'm just going to have to keep it very spiritual based. I think that there are these, I feel like there's like a secret society, and now I want to know them. I want to like help be a steward of the bloodline, not to bring wickedness into the world. I just want to.
You're already in.
Shelley, what's your thought on all of it?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I mean, no, I'm being flat up straight with you. I think that the fact that there are so many stories, from every culture and every day. I mean, there are too many things that match across continents where people were never going to interact with each other. So how in the world could they have a similar idea to someone who is all the way on the other side of the world? There has to be something to it. I absolutely think that whether it is through a mass misunderstanding of what they were seeing or what they were experiencing, or whether there actually was something there, it was something. And I really hope it was aliens, because I don't want to think about some bratty little heathen Nephilim running around. I had a nephew, let me tell you, I'd have believed that one was the spawn of Satan. If you'd have turned me loose within 5 minutes, I'd have figured it out. No, I don't know. I think it's real, and I think that if it is being continued today, I think we're in on it. I think we're assisting it. Roswell. Anyway.
Subtle. Real subtle. So Ryan's going with aliens. You're
I don't
going
want them
with
coming
aliens.
black.
You see when I'm coming back?
I said I don't want to see any men in black.
Oh,
Oh,
I thought
Men
you
in
said I don't
Black.
want them coming back. I couldn't hear what you like. You cut out for a second. But
Right.
yeah,
I don't
no,
want them
yeah.
coming back either.
So I'm aliens. You're alien, Shelley. What were you saying, Blake?
Oh, I was going to say that you two are aliens, and I'm more of the spiritual side of it. That I believe that somebody is out there basically being like, we're going to have this baby under this black moon, and you're going to say shamalama-ling-along as you climax, and we're going to bring the Nephilim back. Yeah, totally believe that. But I'm into
that
some
sounds
weird
like
shit.
too many steps.
So,
Why can't you just enjoy it? Just enjoy it. Why I got to say some kind of
But I'm-
ritualistic crap?
I'm into some weird shit, so that's just me.
But what if these? What if the aliens and the spiritual beings are one and the same?
Yeah,
Like-
his aliens just have wings. Just let him go with it, Ryan. They
Yeah,
have
I don't-
little flip
yeah,
and
I don't-
flutter rings.
I don't deal with what ifs. I don't. What are we always telling you, Ryan? We don't deal with what ifs, man.
Hey man, I mean,
We do. We totally do.
What are you talking about? That's what we deal with all the
I
time.
know. Oh, well, I hope y'all enjoyed the demonic children of the abyss and how they're still out there.
There
So
are three of them right here on this screen.
I was gonna say, and better watch it when you answer your door at Halloween when they come trick or treating.
Those are black-eyed children.
Which also
Black-eyed
kinda
children,
rolls into
demonic children,
Mhm.
yeah, it can all be together. This is why I don't have children. I'm an amazing uncle, and I get to give them back at the end of the day because the moment that my kid turned to me and said, "Daddy, there's a demon in the house," it is off to the orphanage with you, my friend.
And with that, Blake,
No.
why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
All right, y'all. If y'all are interested in helping support the show and what we do, the quickest and easiest way to do that is to become a Patreon member. Our Patreon is only $5 a month, and with that, you instantly unlock over 450 Patreon exclusive videos, which include the pre and the post broadcast, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast. So you get an extra hour with us on a weekly basis. It also includes full-length, unedited investigation footage and Estes methods as well. Your support from this goes directly back into the show and helps to keep bringing you these weekly episodes as well as all the ghostly adventures. So a reminder, if you want to try it before you purchase, we do offer that 7-day free trial as well. So go and check it out. It's patreon.com/EVP podcast. That's 2 P's, EVP podcast. So make sure you are following us on your favorite social media platform or podcast platform. You can check our Facebook and X profiles. Wednesday morning, we will have our link tree up. You can find all the links to the platforms that we are on, as well as our Patreon page, and as well as our public investigations, which is our Eventbrite page. Make sure you go and follow that because we do have tickets that are on sale right now for the Gregg County Historical Museum on June 14th. It will be my birthday celebration. So y'all come out, celebrate with me. We are going to have a fantastic time. As I turn the next year at the stroke of midnight that night. Yes, it's actually going to fall on my birthday. Woohoo! Yay! If you would like to meet us in person, you do have some options. May 30th. I think it's May 30th. Sorry, my closing thing got completely corrupted before we opened, so I had to come up with this on the fly. And so if I get these dates wrong, I apologize. May 30th through June the 1st, we will be at Fan Expo at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center with Mr. Chad Wandell from Ghost Geeks. That is going to be in Dallas, Texas. June 7th, we will be at Chicagoland at a Countryside Banquet Expo Center. Banquet? Why did I say it like that? Banquet Expo Center, Convention Center. It's a wet bank, buddy. Anyways, that is June the 7th, and that is going to be up towards Chicago. Then we are off July 18th through the 19th, Paranormal Rock down to Broadhead Manor in Broadhead, Wisconsin, followed by July 25th through the 27th, we're at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash in Gettysburg. And then I don't think we're coming home until we get done with this next one, which is August 2nd, the KC Paracon in Kansas City. Then we're off to Phenomicon, September the 3rd through the 6th in Vernal, Utah. And then off back up north, October the 4th to the Rock Island Roadhouse Esoteric Expo. So far, those are all the places you can catch us this year, all across the country, north, south, east, and west. So go check out those events, get your tickets, and come and say hello to us. We do appreciate every little like, comment, download, heart, react, whatever you can give us. Those help as well. And if you have any stories, questions, or comments, or would like to have us as a guest on your show, you can email those requests over to the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
go like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube page.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us for another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, for myself, I am Blake Smith. My partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ryan Roberts. Thank y'all. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.